And on today's show, how the new type of LTC planning works. Part 5 of this week's series, Why Long-Term Care Coverage is Essential, with long-term care expert Maria Sarchi. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician in Innsmouth. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome very much to the 5th day, Maria. And now you have, I'm really curious, the new LTC?
Yes.
Do you have a whole new story, a whole new revamp here?
Not a new story, not a revamp. What I'm going to say is that care planning today is very different than it's been 10 years ago, 15 years ago, most certainly 20 years ago.
So if advisors haven't really visited LTC land in a long time, this whole thing is totally reconfigured.
It most certainly is. And what is most different today is that this is a consultative, dynamic, fluid experience with the consumer.
Walk me through, I'm in my first meeting with my client. I know I want to talk about this, if nothing else, to indemnify myself from a lawsuit. After yesterday's show, if you didn't see yesterday, at the very end, Maria started talking about, hey, listen, you need to document that you actually brought this up to your client, especially if they're saying they're going to self-insure.
That's right.
So what's my first salvo in my discussion? How do I entree into this?
Very, very first point is to ask the consumer that's across from you as the advisor if they've known anyone who's had a care event.
Wow.
First question.
How many times did they say yes?
Almost every time.
Almost every time.
Almost every
Wow.
time. If they don't know of someone who's received care, then they know of a caregiver, if they potentially have been one themselves. When you ask that question, the response that you get to it tells you 1,000 words. 1,000 words. Because it gives you the opportunity to understand what is driving that person to A, first tell you that story, B, to give you an inside peek to their emotion around what happened. What do they think about that? Is there concern about themselves, concerned about their own loved ones having to care for them? And more times than not, because we do know that care planning is consumer driven, the consumer's done their own research already. And they may not have known that you, the advisor, could have helped them with that. So they are going to outside resources. They're looking on the internet. They're calling, a 1-800 number that they may have seen advertised for a long-term care specialist. And so your clients are out there inquiring about care planning. And the best way for you to start the conversation is to ask them if they've known anyone who's had a care event, and then listen.
And you said most of the time they say yes.
Yes.
Now, see, this is a complete consumer issue for me, because if they actually know people that have had a long-term care event, you would think they would be interested then. How can you exempt yourself from the long-term care conversation when you actually yourself know somebody that's went through an event?
True, true. And often the response will be about a family member or a friend, as I said before, receiving care or as a caregiver. And what you'll hear the individual tell are not only stories about the financial impact, but the impact to the family as well. It's incredible how the dynamic changes. So when we talk about new LTC planning today, what we really mean is this consultative, holistic approach, because the marketplace has never been so rich with different solutions.
Okay, so we've had the discussion. I told you I had a life event that I've been involved with. Maybe I was the caregiver, I know somebody. Okay, now what's my segue from, we have a common place to begin.
Most
what's
certainly.
What's the next step?
Yeah, so the next step after we have a common ground, there's a validation that we need to be really thinking about care planning, is to get some sense for what the key factors are that are driving the person's concern over a care event. And by that I mean, is the person concerned about not being able to take care of themselves? Are they concerned about family members? Are they concerned about cost? Is it fear of not being able to remain in their own home? You want to find the 3 or 4 things that are really meaningful to your client about care planning and its objective.
I have a question for you, because I think this is a huge one, because I seem to come across it myself, and I'm interested if you do. Do you think most consumers are still in the mindset that when they think of long-term care planning, they're speaking automatically of nursing home confinement?
I do believe that's a part of it. I don't think that individuals really understand what the options are. So 20 years ago, did we know what an assisted living facility was?
No, I didn't.
We did not. 20 years from now, there'll probably be a different form of care that we haven't even been able to think of today. So I think you're right, Steve. I think that people think about long-term care and they think automatically about nursing home. This is part of the education. This is why I'm on your show this week, so that we can educate advisors about what the new LTC planning is.
I used to think when we talked about life insurance, people didn't want to talk about it because we're talking about their death, right?
Yeah.
Right up there, I have found, wow, why do they feel so uncomfortable about talking about long-term care?
Does anyone really want to think about a time and place where they're not going to be able to care for themselves?
No, I don't.
No, of course not.
I don't.
But it is a reality. And so it's in some ways more uncomfortable than having the death conversation because, you know, it's inevitable. In the situation of a care event, there's a possibility that you will need care. It's a very high likelihood. And yet no one wants to talk about, well, having somebody come in and care for them personally, care for their home. And the number one message, the number one thing that we really have to put out there is that this is about an empowerment discussion. This is how people make choices today that will give them that freedom and independence down the road.
When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about how do we identify clients that are really quality clients for long-term care and extended care coverage. We'll be right back. It's not how much money you make for your clients, it's how much money they get to keep, especially in retirement. But retirement income could cause Social Security benefits to be taxed. One tax advantage alternative is life insurance designed as a non-modified endowment contract that can generate tax-free income without taxing Social Security benefits. These contracts offer differing funding options depending upon your client's risk tolerance. For more information on how life insurance can be part of your retirement planning, just email me at steve@downtobusiness.tv. Brought to you by Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company. Well, welcome back to our second segment. Of course, we're with Maria Sarchi. She's walking us through long-term care, extended care coverage, planning, care planning, all these cool words you have now. You're kind of a wordsmith in this whole area of geriatric science, you know? I just really enjoy it. Now, as an advisor, when I think about financial resources, I collect all the information. There's CDs or annuities, whatever they have. There's mutual funds, ETFs, their 401k. Is this what you're talking about? All sources of income, all sources of financial resources?
It is, Steve, because you want to ensure that we've got a place, a starting point to help cover the cost for a long-term care insurance premium. We spoke on yesterday's show about the economic impact of care, and that a premium could be $4,500 a year, and the client making the decision that they either want to cover the $4,500 a year in premium or be able to come up with $5,000 a month when there's a care event. So identifying sources of funding when you're doing the care planning, you asked me at the top of this segment, how do you get started? Step one was to ask the consumer if they've known someone that's had a care event. Step two is to identify key benefit drivers. What are they looking to achieve in this process? Well, number three is to help them identify sources of funding. Don't talk about something that's going to be outside of their budget because they'll shut down and not want to take next steps.
That's a key sales procedure, really, in the conversation that you just introduced there. That's a key issue.
It's important to identify where the funds will come from.
When I talk about, I noticed that you really hone in on this issue of what medications are my clients taking.
Yes.
Talk to me why that's so important. I know there's underwriting to be had here, but why is it important?
There is underwriting, and underwriting has evolved, much as the long-term care industry has. So where
I'm assuming that's a good thing.
Well, where someone may have been insurable 5 or 10 years ago, they may not be today for a similar medical condition. You've heard me talk over and over about aligning yourself with an LTC specialist, someone who's market intuitive and can really keep close to the advisor to teach him or her about all the changing factors, such as underwriting. So one of the key 4 questions is to ask about medical history, medicine that they're taking, because that will give us an opportunity to identify, is this person even insurable for the kind of solution that we're talking about?
Would it be true if they were not insurable for a standalone policy, would they be still possibly insurable for a annuity LTC policy?
They could be. Some of the underwriting for the annuity solutions are different than the standalone LTC or even these hybrid LTC solutions that we have in the market today. Where the annuity solutions may not dig as deep, there could be chance for underwriting. But overall, long-term care underwriting is similar across the board.
So in my introduction, my interview with the client, I've walked through your steps. Now I'm at the medication step.
Yes.
Are there certain knockout medications where I know right away, okay, this is not going to be able to go forward?
There are, but I want to set the record straight. We don't expect the advisor to know all of the medications. Gathering the information and then knowing where to go so you can check your resources, that's the most important part of all.
Have you found more benevolency in certain carriers than others, maybe? Are there certain, or is it pretty tight the same?
Straight across the board.
Standardized?
Yes.
Okay. When I'm thinking of the different underwriting, because we talk about standalone policies, I've seen some different requirements for annuity with an LTC rider.
Yes.
I've seen some different with a life insurance with an LTC rider.
Yes.
We're going to get into this all next week, by the way, talking about hybrids. So there's going to be, so sometimes it may not be dead if it's a real issue. If impairment is an issue for a standalone, I still may be able to come over to an hybrid.
You might be able to, yes. It depends upon the situation and what the condition is, what kind of medication the individual's taking.
When you put these 4 questions together, I like the idea. Yes, I think it's gaining common ground by going through, did you have a life event? Knowing the idea of what are your objectives? What are you trying to get done in planning? What's your vision of your future look like? Which I think that line alone, would people say, what do you see yourself?
Yeah.
And I wonder, many times they go, I see myself like my grandma.
Yeah.
It's very endearing. They want to talk about, especially if they had a good relationship with their relative and they lived long. They want to relate, oh, my grandmother she was by herself till 92.
Yeah.
You know, they like that. And then your other one about the resources, because we're so good at this. I think advisors are excellent at gathering good information, intel on the client's finances. But the medication issues, this is where people that are really good at this, Maria, her team, other advisors really understand this arena. And so you don't have to go it alone. This is where you really want to partner up with somebody and get into a strategic alliance.
So true. And the reason why that is valid and important is because as we mature and people live longer and the market itself changes and new products come to market, it can change pretty rapidly. So you want to align yourself with experts in that field.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance officer. Missed an episode? Just hop out to our video archives. And remember, you could be wiser as an educated advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you next week.